Hello everyone and welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, something that I've actually never done before, something that I've always been interested in, and that is going to be a re-edit of a movie. Now this isn't going to be those fan edits that you've seen of Star Wars that kind of like trash on the original product, like I'm going to make something that's not good, because I really love M Night Shyamalan. He's one of my favorite filmmakers. He's one of the most interesting filmmakers working in Hollywood, and you know, with Knock at the Cabin just being released, I've been rewatching his films, and I rewatched The Village, one of the most misunderstood movies of Shyamalan's career, and I decided to do a little re-edit of it because, you know, watching the film, if you know how it goes, it makes a little bit of weird choices with where it places things, and I was wondering if it would work if you kind of reorganized the last half of this film, so that's exactly what I did in this edit. So I will be getting to all the changes that I made in this film a little bit later on in the video. I really only made 8 changes, and 3 of them are probably the big changes, and the rest of them are more contextual changes that kind of inform the other changes that I made in the edit. So I will be breaking all that down in a little bit in this video, but first I want to talk about how you can actually watch my version of this film, because I want to be able to share this thing with you. And a couple of disclaimers, I will say that you need to own the film. So as you saw, I have it on DVD, or it is also streaming on Disney Plus in the UK. So if you have Disney Plus and you have the VPN, you technically have legal access to the movie, and that is why I ask you guys to have. So this is not a way to, you know, pirate this movie, because that's not what I want to do. I want to support this film. Even if you go ahead and rent the movie or buy the movie, I definitely recommend doing that, because The Village is a great film. It is so good, and I'll get into the original cuts a little bit later, why I love that film as well. And so this is really a passion project of mine. This is coming from a good place. It's not one of those edits that's like saying, oh, I hate this film, I want to turn it good. That's not the intention with this at all. And so whether this is your first time watching The Village or not, I think that it is a very interesting experiment to take, essentially watching this film, because if you haven't seen the movie, this is a new version that you will watch, and you'll kind of have your first experience with my version of the edit. And I've showed a couple people, and they found it interesting, the changes that I made after they found out what was the original version versus what the version they saw was. And if you have seen The Village before, go check this one out, because I think it is an interesting experiment to do. Watch the end of this video first of me kind of giving my reasonings of why I move certain things around, and then you can go back and watch my edit. So how do you watch my edit? Well, I have an email called thevillagereedit@gmail.com, and if you send that an email, it'll give you an automated message that will give you a link to a download link to where you can watch this film. And like I said, please have ownership of the film, so this isn't means of piracy. This is actually very important to me, so support this movie, support The Village, and let's just get into all of my changes. And so in order to get into the headspace of why I changed certain things, let's go over the original cut of The Village. And so in my edit, I actually did not change anything until an hour into the film. The last 45 minutes is the only thing that I touched. The first half of this film, I think, is brilliant. This movie follows Bryce Dallas Howard and Joaquin Phoenix's characters named Ivy and Lucius as they are kind of stuck in this village. There's these creatures out in the woods, and the elders of this town say that, oh, you can't leave to get some medicine, even though there are some kids dying in this village, because if you go out, you can be captured by these creatures, and these creatures can come in and cause us harm. You cannot, under any circumstance, leave this village. But there's also some romance going on between these two characters, and another character, Noah, played by Adrian Brody, who also has a crush on Ivy. And so once he finds out that there's a thing going on between Lucius and Ivy, he decides to stab Lucius, nearly killing him, causing Ivy to just really want to go out to the other towns out past the woods and get some medicine to be able to save his life. And so that is where my first changes take place.
I ask permission to travel through Covington Woods and go to the towns to retrieve medicines that may save Lucius Hunt.
And so the father actually agrees to this. Walker decides to let her go, but first he decides to take her and tells her a story about her grandfather, of how he was killed in this brutal way, and kind of how it informs the decisions that he made as a character as they're kind of walking up to this very mysterious shed. And from there you cut to Ivy getting ready to go on her quest, and she goes out and does all these things to be able to prepare for this. And once she's out in the woods with these 2 other people, they decide to kind of abandon her because they're too scared to go on. And, you know, she has these magic rocks that's supposed to save her from the creatures, and she decides to drop these rocks, and you don't really know why. So it cuts back to the scene of her at the shed, and it is revealed that the creatures are actually not real, that the elders decided a long time ago to kind of scare the entire village to stay in this place, because they've all kind of gone through these different tragedies. And so you don't really know exactly why this is the case, but you now know that the creatures are not real, that the elders are pretending to be the creatures to keep everybody in. And from there, you get to see this really great sequence where Ivy is going through the woods and this creature is stalking her, but in the back of your mind, you know the creatures aren't real, real, and so it kind of deflates the tension the first time that you watch the film, because you know the creatures aren't real. You know that there's somebody in the suit. You don't quite know who it is, and that's the question that Shyamalan wants you to ask. He doesn't want you to ask, oh, we're terrified of this creature. What is going on? Are we scared of whatever this situation is? He instead wants you to ask, oh, who's in this suit? If the creatures aren't real, who is trying to attack her? What is going on with this thing? But the problem is, the way this movie is set up, I think a lot of people, when they watch this film, and the reason why a lot of people don't like this film, is it really deflates attention if you're not kind of thinking who is in that suit, rather than, oh, I'm scared of this creature. So this is the first big change that I'll make later on. So from here, Ivy actually takes out the creature. He falls into this pit that, she fell in earlier in the film, and because she was blind, she was able to find the same branches. She knew it was there, so she tricked the creature into falling into this pit, and it is revealed that Noah was the one who was following her around in this creature's suit. You find out that he was the one kind of killing the animals throughout the first half of the film, and you find out just all these different things about that, and then she goes off to the road, and she follows it out to the towns, and you find out that it's also in modern days. So the first twist was that the creatures weren't real, which you found out before the creature sequence happened, and then now, when she got out of the woods, you find out that she's actually in modern day, and that is the reason why all these people decided to lie to the town, to say that they're in the 1800s, and to kind of put on this charade with these monsters to keep them in, because everything in the outside world is just a giant lie.
You came from the woods. In there?
Will you help me? I need to find a doctor of medicine.
And so once Ivy returns with the medicines, everybody finds out that she killed a creature in her quest to get all this stuff, and the elders find out, and they know that the creatures are not real, and so they realize that Noah was killed in this moment. So they have a little conversation of saying, like, we can now keep on this lie because somebody has died, and we can say that Noah was killed by the creatures, therefore making all these fables and all these lies and all these fairy tales true to the people in this town. And Ivy comes into the room, goes to Lucius's side, and the movie ends from there. So that was The Village, and as I'm watching this movie, I was really wondering, the first kind of inception of this idea to do a re-edit of this film was, I was wondering if you take that scene of, Ivy being led by her father to the shed and revealing that the creatures were not real, if you take that scene, just isolate it in itself, and you put it at the end of the movie, and you kind of hold off on the reveal that the creatures are fake, how does that change this film? So that's exactly what I did. That is the first change that I made, and from there, the dominoes kind of fell, and I had to do some other changes to make this story work. So at the same points that I mentioned when I first started talking about the first film, is once Ivy decides to go up to her father and request to go on her quest to get the medicine for Lucius, that is where I made my first change. So after Ivy decides to ask for the medicine, it then instead cuts to the scene that was after the entire sequence where she figures out that the creatures are fake, because, Walker sits his daughter down and explains how the whole thing worked. He explains how the elders were pretending to be the creatures this entire time, and then he says, you can go out past the woods and go to the towns. Here is a note of medicine that you need to get, and here's a watch. And so I decided to cut out, obviously, all the creature stuff, and I just went from Ivy's request directly to him giving her the note and the watch. Therefore, you do not know that the creatures are fake at all. Then this cuts off to her going on her quest. She goes out with the two guys, exactly how the original edit is. And so in the original cut of the film, she has these magic rocks as she goes on her quest with these two other guys, and because she knows that the magic rocks are kind of just a ruse to be able to make them have a sense of security in order to go on this journey, she herself doesn't think that they will actually do anything, because obviously the creatures are not real. And so in my change, when you don't know the creatures are real, once the other guys leave and she drops the rocks onto the ground, where in the original cut it's because she knows that the creatures are not real, so she doesn't need these fake magic rocks. In my edit of film, it recontextualizes that scene as, she's dropping the rocks not because she knows the creatures are not real, but because she really does believe in what Lucius said, because he wanted to go on the journey because he believed that he was pure of heart, because he was going on this journey for love and not out of fear, and so she's kind of believing in Lucius. So I think it gives that a whole different meaning in this film. From here, we skip the actual creature reveal, and we go to Walker telling the rest of the elders that she has gone out on this journey, and he's freaking out. This is kind of more foreshadowing into not only the creature reveal, but it's now foreshadowing to the entire reveal that the whole thing is a ruse, that they are in modern day. And so once Ivy goes to the creature, she takes out the creature and he falls into the pits. I also skip the parts where you see that it is Noah in the pit, and I just skip to her standing triumphantly above the pit because she has taken out the monster, so now she can run off to, go to the village. And the first reveal in this film, the first Shyamalan twist, if you will, is the fact that they are in modern day. This is the first sense that you get that the elders have been lying this entire time. And so instead of the first lie being the creatures, the first lie is that they are in modern day. And so now you're still kind of holding off the creature reveal. So where do I put the creature reveal? That is a great question that I even had in making this edit. But before I get into that, there's actually two moments during the entire creature sequence that was painstaking to change, because there's two ADR moments. There's a moment where after she falls in the pit before the creature attacks her, she's kind of wiping all the mud off of herself, and there's a voiceover of Walker saying,
"There did exist rumors of creatures in these woods. It is in one of the history books I used to teach in the towns."
And so obviously in the original edit of the film, you already had that conversation with him, and that is a scene that actually cuts entirely from the film, and that is when he's explaining the twist with the creatures, with Ivy, and so that voiceover is held over this point in the film. So I had to actually go in and remove that dialogue from the sound while also keeping the ambient sound, the music, and the sound of her, wiping off her jacket. That was very hard to do. And there's another moment when the creature first goes up to Ivy, and because she can't see, she can't tell that the creature is right in front of her, and because she knows they aren't real, she's whispering to herself, they aren't real.
It's not real. It's not real.
So that's also dialogue that I had to cut out painstakingly. That one's actually easier than the other one, but still, cutting out dialogue from a movie that's baked in with the other sound effects and the other music in the background is very difficult. And so the entire sequence about the reveal of the modern day twist is all entirely intact. I didn't change any of that stuff. And so Ivy is heading back to the village. The village is kind of spreading the word that she is back, that she has killed a creature in her wake. And this was the perfect opportunity to put that scene with Noah in the pit, because, the elders are talking about the fact that, the creature has been killed, and they know that it is Noah. They know before us as the audience, we know that it was Noah. And so when the two elders in the background start crying and they say, "Oh, Noah," and they start, sobbing because that is their son, then we cut in montage to that scene of Noah inside the pits dying, and then it's just an absolutely heartbreaking reveal this time around that yes, the creatures were also fake. Not only were you in the modern day this entire time, but the creatures were also fake, and that Noah was the one in that suit this entire time. And so that is actually the reveal. Instead of, Ivy going up to the shed and seeing that the creatures are fake and seeing the suits hanging on the wires, instead it's finding out through Noah's death that the creatures are not real. This then cuts back to the whole scene with Walker and all the other elders deciding to keep on going with this lie that's, Noah has created the chance to be able to say that the creatures are real and to keep this fairy tale alive for even more future generations. And so once Ivy goes up to the bed and is at Lucius's side and she has the medicine and the film ends in the original cut, I decided then to cut to the shed scene immediately after this. And this is the one change that I made that I'm still unsure of, because I think in my edit it might be a little redundant to have, after you are revealed to have the creatures being fake through the eyes of Noah being killed in the pits, because I just had that scene cutting directly after that to another scene explaining that the creatures are not real, having Walker explain all these things. It kind of feels redundant, but the reason why I decided to keep the scene, because one, it's a brilliant scene. I really like how it plays out of her kind of, learning the backstory with the grandfather, and then, Walker saying that she is a great leader. I trust you because I can see that you're different, that you can possibly lead this place one day. And so when they go up to this shed, it's now recontextualized. So instead of figuring out that the creatures are fake, it's Ivy figuring out that the creatures are fake. And so yes, us as the audience, we already know, but Ivy doesn't. And so this entire sequence, instead of it being kind of the reason why he's going to trust her to go out to the rest of the world, is now she's being trusted to run this place in the future, because they just had that conversation about whether or not they can keep this lie. And, Walker was saying that Lucius and Ivy are the future of this place. The elders can't live forever. They can't keep this lie going on forever. And once they're gone, they have to pass on this lie to the next generation. And that is going to be through Ivy.
You are a strong one, Ivy. You lead when others would follow. You see light when there is only darkness. I trust you. I trust you among all others.
And when it comes to this change, when you look at the first film thematically, it kind of still stays resonant with what it is in my edit, because when you have, these elders that's essentially lying to their new generations of children that their world is this very nice place where there's no murder, there's no death, there's no all of these things, it's kind of sticking their head in the sand, and they're kind of oblivious to the real problems of the world. And when you kind of apply that to our real world and see the consequences that ideal has had in our actual society, especially here in the United States, I think it's an interesting take to be able to leave the movie on a question mark of whether or not Ivy is going to continue that path, because when you look at it from her perspective, it's absolutely terrifying. Her entire life is a lie. Everything outside of this place is different. Yes, there's crime and there's murder and there's money and there's greed and there's all these things that can be seen as bad, but also, are these elders not, complicit with these things? Are they not guilty of, the deaths that have happened in this village, with Brendan Gleeson's son, dying because, they didn't have the proper medicines to save his life, because they are isolating themselves in the 1800s, essentially? Is that immoral? Is Lucius being stabbed immoral, and them, not letting Ivy go out to get the medicine? Is it immoral to live this life in the way that they are living it? And I think that's a very interesting question to now ask the audience. And like I said, those questions are not necessarily, out of the picture on the original edit. Those are all there. That's why I love The Village so much. It's not so much about it being a jump scare movie, a very scary horror film. It's more about the characters and the decisions that they make and this world that they have built themselves and the morality of these decisions. And I think ending the film in this way in specific, with leaving that question right there at the end, it kind of leaves the audience kind of thinking right at the end, rather than having the movie end in a nicer, tight little bow. And so that is why I left that scene in, and that's why I kind of have it at the end of the film recontextualized for this context.
It is only farce. Do not be frightened.
And that is where I decide to cut to the credits. And so those are all the changes that I made. Like I said, it's not a crazy amount of changes. Really, the only thing I did was move the reveal of the creatures being fake to the end of the movie, and I adjusted everything from there, kind of moving backwards from there. And so the only scene that I cut entirely was Walker explaining to Ivy in that scene where they're sitting on the side of the shed. And, I kept part of it with the whole watch and the whole note parts of that sequence, but everything else before that I cut entirely. And so the movie is about 2 minutes shorter than the original theatrical cut. I also watched some of the deleted scenes of this film that's on the Blu-ray, and unfortunately the quality of those deleted scenes are not enough for me to put in it. There's a great deleted scene of, I think it's Brendan Gleeson's character talking to Lucius and to Noah, saying that there's a reason why we are here, and that his brother was killed by the creatures, and it's a very suspenseful scene. It's shot very well, as Shyamalan says in that clip, and I would like to put it in the film, but just the quality of that scene is not good enough. So I really hope that they actually release The Village on Blu-ray, so I can eventually make a better quality version of this film that I can release for you guys, my fan edits, and I can actually integrate some of the deleted scenes as well into that edit. But that is where I will leave this video. That is where I'll now ask you guys, what do you think about my changes? What would you do differently if you were to do an edit of The Village? And if you watched it, how seamless was it? Did it feel like I moved stuff around, or, is it an interesting take? What are your thoughts? I'm very curious to see all of you guys' thoughts, and I'm interested in possibly making a version 2 with your guys' requests. So that is going to be my re-edit of The Village. So if you want to see more different videos like this on the channel, definitely comment down below, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel just to see more reviews in general. I'll be talking about Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania later this week, because I'm very excited for that release of that movie, and also Cocaine Bear next week, which is going to be a ride. So definitely subscribe to the channel to see more reviews just like this one. I hope to see you all in my next one.